All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next community meeting of the Keptn project. In the last community meetings, we had really great discussions around the quality gates standalone use case. This use case will be available soon. Actually, we are working on a beta release of this use case, and it's around the corner. But in the last meetings, we also discussed documents and specifications very extensively, and this was also the reason why we decided to specify a workflow around specification documents. And in this community meeting, we will propose this workflow. We will explain you how it works and how we will continue working with specification files. And we will also take a look into a real example. Andreas will show us this example and explain how to propose a change of the specification. And the agenda of today's community meeting looks as follows. First, I will talk a little bit about the workflow for proposing a specification change. Then we will discuss Andreas' pull request. And at the end, we want to invite everyone who is at Keptn to stop at our booth. We will be there. The Keptn crew, the Keptn team is at Keptn, and feel free to stop by to ask for questions, to get a demo, and so on. Well, as I said, in the last meetings, we extensively discussed a couple of documents, and we also got feedback from the community that they want to have a clear understanding, for example, which events are currently implemented, or when events are supported, or the support of events are changed. And this was the reason why we decided to build a workflow around working with specification files. And to bring it to the point, in the Keptn organization on GitHub, you will now find a repository, the Keptn spec repository. And within this repository, we will maintain all specifications that are relevant for the Keptn project, and also are relevant for specifying the behavior of Keptn. And for proposing a change of the specification, you as a contributor have now the chance to create a pull request on this specification. And within this community meetings, we will then discuss those changes, and we will discuss the advantages or disadvantages of the one or other change, so that everybody is on the same page, and we also can better communicate how we will continue working on various implementations. And as soon as a pull request gets merged into the repository, we will then tag the specification. And based on this tag, we will then continue implementing the specification. And there's also a correlation between Keptn release and the specification that's based on. And each change of the specification is also correlated to GitHub issues, so that everything is tracked and you can see the progress of a configuration change. Well, yeah, and when we finally release a new Keptn version, then you will see in the release notes which specification changes have been implemented or which tag is it related to. Okay, let's switch to this repository. We will just have a look into it to show you what's currently in there. Thanks a lot. When you now go to the Keptn organization, then you will see this spec repository. And within this repository, we already have the specification of the Keptn cloud events, the specification of the shipyard. I'm sure you know the specification very well. And there is also specification of a uniform. Actually, we should remove this link because we have no implementation of the uniform yet. Actually, it's a draft as you can see it here in the headline. And on the bottom, there is the specification for SRE files that are used for Keptn, or are needed for Keptn. And when you now want to have a configuration specification change, then you just file your PR, then you create or you put or create the PR against the repository, and then we will discuss the one or other PR throughout the community meeting. And as you can see here, there are currently 4 PRs available. And today we are going to discuss the third one. It's the extension of the shipyard with an approval strategy. This PR was created by Andreas. Andreas proposed this new feature or this change. And I will now hand over to Andreas to tell us more about the idea behind this specification change.
Thank you for this kind introduction, and also hello from my side. So what we are now doing is exactly following the new approach, discussing this PR together. And what I'm proposing is that we extend the shipyard with the so-called approval strategy. But first, please let me give you a quick reminder how Keptn works. So Keptn uses a so-called lighthouse service or P2 service for evaluating the quality of a deployment. And this P2, or in the future it will be called lighthouse service, then gives us an evaluation result, which can either be pass, warning, or fail. And then using this result, we can either decide to promote this artifact or to discard this artifact, and so that it does not get promoted into the next stage. And Keptn now always uses a kind of automatic approval. That means as soon as we see that the quality gates are passed, that we get a pass or even a warning, we say, yeah, promote this artifact into the next stage. But what's actually needed now is to also ask the users, the Keptn users, whether this artifact should really be promoted. And that's now the reason why I propose a new field in the shipyard file. And as you can see, I'm naming this new property in the shipyard file approval strategy. And here I identified 6 different ways or 6 different strategies which I was able to think of. And now I would like your feedback actually on this 6 different approval strategies. And therefore I will explain each of these approval strategies. The first one is automatic pass. And automatic pass means, or let's say, the first term always indicates whether this should be done by Keptn or whether a user should be asked or not. So automatic means Keptn is doing it, and manual is Keptn user is asked for the action. So automatic pass now means when the gatekeeper service, who is responsible for deciding whether an artifact is promoted or not, receives a pass of the evaluation service of the quality gates, then it will automatically promote this artifact. And if you choose warning, it's kind of similar. Instead, also an artifact is passed if the evaluation service, the lighthouse service, reported as warning. And the third automatic approval strategy I found is fail. So it is always promoted regardless of the evaluation result. So even if I get a fail, I potentially would like to promote this into the next stage, because in the next stage I do further analysis or it's a kind of emergency.
The third option is kind of unnormal, so to say, because do you really want to, or is there a scenario where you want to promote an artifact even though the quality gates failed?
Probably yes. I can think of security vulnerabilities. For example, you really would like to have this artifact into production because otherwise your users get harmed. And
But does this mean, can I just quickly interject? Because I also struggled when I read it and trying to understand the use case. Would you really then define this in the shipyard file, or do you also envision an option when you do a new artifact, a new build, basically that you then kind of override it? Because by default, I think every shipyard, every pipeline should be as secure as possible. But you're right, there might be individual builds when you know you have to go through quality gates, but then I would define it on a build-to-build basis, on a new artifact by new artifact basis, kind of overriding the default. Is that possible?
this is also a good point how we can implement it, and this would make this obsolete. This is really good because what this is actually doing is it disables our quality gates.
Right.
Exactly.
And if you have quality gates in place, you probably want to use it. So I would now agree that we need a way to promote, to push an artifact, a new artifact, and to tell Keptn always promote it regardless of the result of the quality gates. And this should override, or we don't really need it in the shipyard file, in the central place. Yeah.
But just to add to that, I don't see why we should hide the option from the user. I mean, if the user ever thinks that they have a valid use case, it's not for us to judge if it's valid or not. I mean, it doesn't harm us having the option. It doesn't need to be sensible at this
but
time.
It should not be at least best practice, and maybe we should clearly state this here in the specification, and
not documented.
Not recommended because you're disabling your quality gates.
Yeah, I mean, there's one use case, especially in the beginning of a new project when you have no clue about what your quality gates actually look like, right? If you experiment around and you want to get things through and then learn and actually fill up your historical data, I think then it would make sense. But still, I would not, by default, I would not probably put this into the shipyard file, because what I want to put into the shipyard file is my ideal state of the pipeline. And then every time I send a new artifact, then I say, hey, it's my first artifact. I know the quality gates will fail anyway, but I want to get it through. Then I want to override it. I think that's what I propose.
Okay. What should we do now? What is the community saying? Should we completely remove it and provide an option to simply deploy a new artifact and say, yeah, always pass the quality gates because I probably don't know my quality yet and don't have it in the shipyard?
I would keep it in the shipyard, to be honest with you, but make it clear in the documentation it's not best practice, and provide an option with the new artifact event where I can override the default behavior of my approval strategy. Now the question then is, how would that look like if you have multiple stages? And if I say new artifact and I push the new artifact from the beginning of the pipeline, then will that override mean I'm overriding all the stages? Or can I define overrides for individual stages? This is something I think we need to discuss. But I definitely have it in there, also for completeness from a documentation perspective, and that people know. But then let it be overridden.
Okay, perfect. So the last three are actually the same. Instead of an automatic approval, the user is asked. So a manual pass, for example, means the user is even asked when the evaluation service, the lighthouse service, returns evaluation result pass. So then the user can say, yeah, promote this into the next stage or not. And here, especially this manual fail totally makes sense to me, because as as you said, and when you don't know the criteria yet, maybe you want to promote an artifact, even if quality gates are not passed yet.
And this option allows an end user to overrule an evaluation result. And when the person provides a annotation, then we also can add this annotation to the evaluation result. Why exactly in this case, the person says that it's not a fail, it's a warning or pass.
Okay, in the shipyard file, this would be simply be added to each and every stage where we can do a promotion. So in the last stage, we don't need any approval strategy anymore because we cannot promote the artifact further. So this is the reason why here in the production, we don't have an approval strategy. But for example, in dev, we can use an automatic strategy, and before promoting the artifact into production, we can ask the user, for example, using a Slack integration or so, whether he really would like to have this feature into production or not.
I would have one thing to add here. What if I want to combine the two strategies? For instance, automatic pass. So if it's a pass, it should work, obviously. But if it's a warning, I want to give my manual approval anyway.
Good point.
This is a good point. How would you name this?
I would actually use a comma-separated list for the approval strategy, but somehow this doesn't make sense with the naming then, or with the definition, because if I combine automatic pass with manual warning, the two definitions kind of overrule each other either way. So I don't know. Like maybe a backup approval strategy or a secondary approval strategy, so we can give them an order or something like that.
But yeah, I also think your or your thoughts are valid, but maybe this would be the first implementation would go for this 6 different kinds of approval strategies, and then we can always extend more approval strategies. So
I mean, the question really is, what if nothing here matches, right? What if I said automatic pass and it's a failure? Do I ever get a chance to actually then override this mistake? Or let's say if I still want to do it because I have an emergency, how would I be able then to promote? Is there still some information that I can get? The link, maybe the approval link, in case I have to still approve it?
in the current implementation, no, there is no way.
So I get feedback that the evaluation failed, no approval. And then if I still want to have it improved, I would need to run the pipeline again and then override it basically, right? That's what that feels also a little counterproductive.
Yeah, maybe we actually need a 7th approval strategy that kind of combines manual and automatic approval, but I think that's beyond the topic of discussing.
I actually think it's I mean, basically there's two things, right? You either have, we've reached a certain limit and we want to approve it, then you can say automatic or manual for certain levels, pass, warning, or fail, or what else should happen in case I'm not. It's like with the objectives, right? My objective is 100 milliseconds. And if I succeed, then I want to do X. But if not, I want to do something else. And maybe that's the way we need to think about this, right? We want to approve it either automatically or manually if we hit a certain stage. But if this criteria does not meet, then what do you want to do? Nothing? Or do you still want to send a link, let's say, through Slack, so that people at least get the chance, right? Because basically that's what it is. Do we have what's the state of reaching an approval, and if so, is it automatic or manual? And what if we don't reach that state? What else do you do?
I think this brings us to the point that we have to separate the action and the criteria, the passing criteria. We cannot combine those. We have to split them. so that we can then individually combine them.
But this will solve a map. Basically, this will solve Christian's proposal for having automatic pass, and if it is a warning to do a manual review. And what Andy needs is when we get a failure, so that it's not passed, is that the user still gets a message, or an event that the evaluation is not passed, and afterwards he can always decide to promote it if it's needed. So that we don't have to run the pipeline again. Is this correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
But every manual approval gives you the chance to promote, regardless of the evaluation result.
Maybe a different approach. What if the approval strategy is automatic pass, comma, manual? This means if it passes, it's automatically promoted. And if anything else happens, you have the chance to manually promote. So we don't specify that it needs to be manual pass, warning, or fail. It's just as an extra step, you can manually approve whatever happens.
I just feel like comma not the best way of doing it, because if I look at it, then I don't know what's the first and what's this thing behind the comma. But I get where you're getting to, but it should basically be what's my approval behavior and what's the default behavior if I'm not approving. Right? So I could say my approval strategy is automatic if I have pass, or it could be manual if I have pass, and default would be just manual, right? If I'm outside of that range, and I think that would be the default behavior anyway. I don't think I would ever override the default behavior to automatic. Yeah. And I think then the only other question that I have for what the default behavior would probably most always be manual, unless I want to avoid spamming. Because if I have 50 builds a day and 40 of them fail, then I don't want to get 40 options to still promote, right? So I think that's the reason why you want to actually have the specific option to say, what do you want to do in case we don't approve it? Do you want to get a manual notification or not? I think this depends then in high frequency deployment environments, where you may say, no, I just want to get it. I just want to get notifications in case I'm reaching the state of approved.
But this is more an issue of your uniform, how you configured Keptn. So you can register to events, and if you decide not to register to them, you don't get this event. So this should not be part of the uniform of the shipyard.
Well, then let me ask you another question. What happens? What event is triggered in case I say automatic pass, I'm not passing? What happens? Do I have an option to receive that event, that the approval stage failed or the approval strategy did not match? Or will I just get an event in case I'm actually passing?
Hard to answer because it's not implemented yet. So
yeah. Well, what if we? I don't know.
But I guess we had a really good discussion now. So as a homework, I would propose that everybody sits down and thinks how he or she would like to have Keptn, so the approval strategy within Keptn. And please make comments on this PR, and then we can have a short follow-up in the next community meeting. And of course, it would be also valid to go with this specification now and to have a first implementation and then extend the specification and the implementation. So to have an iterative approach.
I like it.
Let's do this as homework. Perfect. Then we have one final slide.
All right. Yeah.
Which is we would like to invite you to visit us at the KubeCon. So Jürgen, Dirk, Alois, and also me from the Keptn team will be at KubeCon in San Diego. This KubeCon already takes place next week, and we will be located at the Dynatrace booth, which is P39. So please step by, ask your questions. We are welcoming you, and we're happy to answer all your questions.
Meet the Keptn group.
Yeah, meet the Keptn group. Get the nice cap, like Andy always wears it. Okay, Dan, sorry for my voice, and have a nice day.
Are there further questions regarding today's meeting?
No, I'm good.
Perfect. Then
Perfect.
see you.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.